Next on AM 1480 WLEA, The Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And glad to have with us in the studio live this morning a longtime Hornell area police officer, Bob Margeson, who's talking about his new book, Tribulation's Fate. Bob Margeson, thanks for coming in this morning.
My pleasure. Hello, everybody.
Well, Bob Margeson, very interesting book. Reading the back review, Past Meets Present in the rugged small city of Emmitsburg, New York in 1986. Political unrest, economic woes, and racial tension or not result in violence and murder. One of the main characters here, the main character, Detective Jack Halsey, and other members of the Emmitsburg Police Department meet the challenge. Now, Bob, this is a fictional book, and it takes place in a fictional town, a made-up town, Emmitsburg, New York. How'd you come up with the name Emmitsburg?
Don't really remember, quite frankly. It just, just popped in my mind. I needed something. It could have been from maybe even watching an old Mayberry RFD with Emmett Clark or something. I don't know. So,
yeah, I looked in. I did a Google search for Emmitsburg, New York, and that was the first thing I found out. That there's an Emmitsburg, Maryland.
Yeah. What happens sometimes because I've written an extensive amount of books. Basically, most of them are set in New York State, Western New York State, because that's the area I'm familiar with. And I have at times used actual villages or towns that exist in New York, and I had to change them. But everything I write's fiction, but it's all based on a compilation of places I've been to, maybe I went to school to, visited, driven through. I think it's a fascinating place, the Finger Lakes area and Western New York. I love it here, but don't like the taxes, obviously, and I think we get ignored. But I don't want to get into politics. Okay, I'll
sure.
That. I'll forget that right now.
Talking to Bob Margeson this morning in our studio. He's just written a book about police work and a homicide case. Quickly going over your bio, Bob, you were a police officer 37 years in the Hornell, Alfred, and Canisteo Police Department. Assistant football coach for 29 years at Alfred State College and Alfred University. 1975 graduate of Pittsford Mendon High School, and you went to the University of South Florida, and 2017 graduate of Southern New Hampshire University with an MA in Justice Studies. So you went back to college, Bob, for a little bit.
Yeah, I at one point I had attempted to. And I would give anybody this piece of advice that wants to go for a master's, finish it right after you do your bachelor's, because when you go to work, it is tough. And I tried to get a master's twice in the 80s and the 90s up to Alfred University.
While you were still doing your police work?
Yes, while I was working full-time at Dr. Heinemann's Community Services Administration. And it just
hard to do when you're a full-time employee someplace.
Absolutely. So when I retired, it was like I wanted to get this done, and I researched online, and believe me, I'm not a computer guy, and that really, but if I can do it, anybody out there with minimum skills on computers, which is probably being generous, can do it. So it's hard work, but I wanted to get it done, and it was very enjoyable. Southern New Hampshire University, you see it on TV all the time, and I was very impressed. They're very student-oriented and helpful, and I had an advisor that was great. So, wonderful experience other than fighting with the computer.
Right. Talking to Bob Margeson, the longtime local police officer and local football coach. And he's written an interesting book called Tribulation's Fate. By the way, is that your badge number on the cover at number 348?
Well, what we did, or it was actually after I retired, we had control numbers, and we used to rotate the badges. So on seniority, you would rotate badges when somebody retired or left. So, and at the end, they did make that the badge number. So when I was sitting there at the in designing the book cover, there was this blank space there, and I said, well, let's put the control number in what would have been my badge number, but I retired before they switched over.
Bob Margeson, I see there's a lot of references to the Vietnam War by characters in your book, In Tribulation's Fate. Now, just looking at the year you graduated in 1975, you would have just missed service in Vietnam.
Yes, I did have to sign up.
You would have been too young.
Yeah, I did have to sign up for the draft, the last one. So, but yeah, I know some guys that.
Sure, you would have based just looking at your age here. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And that's now. Did you draw from conversations that you had with veterans, or research, or?
well, it was research, and there might be my main character. The reason that the whole book has to be set up, because once you get into it, you'll find out why we have to have the ex-Vietnam veteran in there as the main character. And he's a Green Beret, so, I'm not going to tip off anything, but anybody familiar with the Green Berets has an idea what they do. And so there's a definite link-up, which is why the story starts in 1986.
And that was, about 12 years or so after the end of Vietnam?
I think it was 1975 when they finally...
okay, 75 was, okay.
Yeah, when they...
11 years, right.
Yeah, the choppers came and when Saigon fell.
Okay.
We need Gary to check on that, though.
Gary, Dr. Gary Ostrower, he knows that period well.
Yes, and he was helpful in a few little tips here in the book, too. Also.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that.
Thank you, Gary.
Yes, he's quite the historian. Longtime Alfred University history professor Dr. Gary Ostrower, who's a regular here on this station, comes on every Tuesday morning on Newsmaker. Bob Margeson, you say, I was going to ask you, what made you want to write this book? And you say you've written a lot of books. How many have you written so far?
Yeah, I've kind of, I went on a roll there. I started writing when I needed something to do. I really needed something to do. And so I had basically kind of outlined this and thought about doing it since the late 80s. And then one just cold winter January night, I took a half night off and started to write, and went on a roll, veritable roll, so to speak. And coming up with ideas after ideas, and so it was fun. I still like it, but I did reach a point where, I'm sitting there, I'm writing, and I'm going, wait a minute here, Robert, you've basically written this before. So I kind of sat back and said, okay, let's lay off.
So you were a police officer in Hornell, Alfred, and the Canisteo police departments. If memory serves me correct, you were at Hornell the longest, Bob?
Yeah, I worked basically around 8 years in Alfred, and enjoyed it. That was a fun place to work. The chief there was... God rest his soul, Eldon Tiny Jameson, was a great guy to work for. And then I transferred to Hornell, put in 25, and then when I retired, and I'm still working part-time, Canasteel a little bit. Chief Amadon, Kyle Amadon's done a great job with the village police department down there.
Sure.
It's a top-notch place. The village should be proud of it. And I like Canasteel, so, that's another reason that I still work there.
That's great. Yeah, you have, I'm sure you see Jack Beers down there, who was a longtime Hornell police officer.
Yeah, old Jackson. Yeah, see him every once in a while. I haven't seen him in a while.
Heavily involved in Canasteel politics and law enforcement for a long time in the Canasteel Valley area. Talking to Bob Margeson, it's very interesting to think of a police officer writing a book locally. Anyway, that's I think you're the first that I know of that's done that.
Yeah, like I said, one of the things I didn't want to do, although I considered it, was I didn't want to be putting out books while I was working full time. I just didn't want to do it. I know that, of course, I don't consider myself any Joseph Wamba. I know Wamba did that, and eventually it led to, I believe he retired early. Why wouldn't you after the success? He wrote some good stuff early on. Some of his later stuff I wasn't that thrilled with, but stuff like The Blue Knight, New Centurions, great stuff.
Now, there's also a college involved with this book, which takes place in the fictional town of Emmitsburg, New York. And everybody who knows you knows that you've been a long-time assistant football coach at the local Alfred colleges.
Yeah, there's there's some football stuff in there. One of the sub-main characters, one of the is a graduate of Emmitsburg University and ends up working for the Emmitsburg Police Department. Not really what he had wanted to do, but there's some football in there for people that like football.
And the book, right on the back cover, talks about some racial tension going on in the 1980s in this fictional upstate town. That would have been something I'm sure that people would have seen in the post-civil rights era. In the, I'm thinking the 60s and 70s especially.
Well, when I came up with this idea, there has to be, sometimes, when I start a book, I don't, who the killer is or whatever is all, when I started, I don't know, it's just, and this, there'll be 3 murders, which they're trying to figure out whether they're all linked together or separate, and all involve black males. So that's why we have the reference that there might be racial tensions. And I don't really think that there were racial tensions in that town, but there was an episode before which might suggest it. But it's certainly an issue, was an issue back then. And I guess it's still an issue today, which is sad in a way.
Going to take a quick break talking to Bob Margeson about his book, Tribulation's Fate, here on the Newsmaker. Stay with us.
You take flooring for granted, don't you? I mean, if you think about how much wear and tear you put that floor through, why would you even think about buying a cheap floor when you need one? Buy quality flooring from Mullen Factory Direct Floor Covering in Almond. Mullins buys in bulk, and that means you save money on quality flooring. They even offer 0% interest for qualified buyers. Shop over 400,000 square feet of major name brand in-stock flooring. And get it installed now. And no box store wait. Mullen Factory Direct Floor Covering in Almond. Let them floor you.
Hey everyone, Ken here. For 2 years now, you've heard Carrie and I use metaphors to test to see if you think your home or your business could use a revenue shot in the backside. Today, because of our new website, I can be a little bit more direct. Income Store has 2 doors. If you have more time than money, you're going to live under door number 1. You're going to see over 400 digital assets, 5 to 20 minutes apiece, that'll teach you how to manage numbers and lead people, or show you 6 growth tips you've never heard of. All of this so you can start growing your home or your business revenue literally immediately. If you have more money than time, door number 2 is going to be for you. You can view some of our managed services. Look for more done-for-you packages. 34% of Americans in 2018 visited one of our managed services. Forbes 3 years in a row quoted, Income Store is an expert at generating home or business revenue. If you'd love to explore how to check out adding revenue to your home or business, just go to incomestore.com. That's incomestore.com.
And checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carolyn. Word of the day is thunderstorms.
Yes, we're watching a bunch of them, Brian, out ahead of a cold front this morning. We've got scattered showers moving across the southern tier, but quite a cluster of showers and thunderstorms this morning out over Lake Erie, north of the Cleveland area, and they are working their way off to the north and east. So there will be a little bit of flash and splash later today. Keep that in mind if you're going to be out and about. I know Brian has the top up on the Camaro today, and that's probably a good idea. Good news is he'll be able to put it down tomorrow. Showers, thunderstorms day. Some of these may produce locally heavy downpours this afternoon, 85 to 90. Sunrise earlier this morning was at 5:44. The sun will set tonight at 8:47. Showers and storms, they move out tonight, as does the front. Lows overnight 60 to 65. It's going to turn partly sunny tomorrow. We may have a leftover shower to deal with, but nothing too serious. Cooler tomorrow, high 75 to 80. Tomorrow night, we're clear to partly cloudy. We're 60 to 65. And we're partly sunny, warm Saturday, 80 to 85. Partial sun also in the forecast for Sunday, Brian.
Back with Bob Margeson, a longtime local police officer who's written a book called Tribulation's Fate. Let's talk about how to write a book. You know, I'm kind of curious. When you sit down and write, is it handwritten? Are you typing? Do you talk into a digital recorder? How's that work, Bob?
I've basically, as I discussed earlier, I'm not a computer guy. Although I did do a couple on some, I just found fighting with the computer took away from the spontaneity, so to speak. So I basically handwrite mine, though I have used the typewriter. There's no real way to do it, whatever you're comfortable with. You know, the thing is just to, it's a craft. Not everybody can do it. I hear this, oh, you ought to write a book, Well, people have experiences and all the rest, and that doesn't translate into the fact that you can write a book any more than I could build a deck, which, trust me, I can't. One of my best buddies is great at it, but he couldn't write a book, and I don't claim to write a deck. This is why we're, a diverse society, and people have certain talents. But if you want to try it, my suggestion is just write. Just do it. Write. Have fun doing it. Don't take yourself seriously, and if you enjoy it, you enjoy it. But after you're done, you're going to want somebody to take a look at it. And I had a friend of my sister's who's actually a professional editor take a look at my first work, and I thought it was much better than what it was. And it was mostly technically. The story was fine, but it was technical things. So, you have to keep in mind that it's a craft, So there's technical things, and in the book there's a few misprints and whatnot, and they came from the computer program or whatnot. There's a couple things I missed, but it's pretty solid. So,
Yeah, I know the different people who I know that write always have certain people that they know go over and proofread.
Yes, and I also want to thank my neighbor, Susan, who teaches up to AU, for answering my questions over the years.
How do you get, how do you go about getting a book published?
Well, here's the difficult thing. You could go on the internet, and there's more than enough, trust me, people that are going to take your money and promise you this and promise you that. So, beware. I looked into, one of the things is that, where can I get the book? Well, I've it jumped on me a little suddenly here, Hornell Humane Society, Cansteel Police Club. You can contact me if you're on Facebook on Messenger, and I'll tell you, or my email, double348 at yahoo.com. That's DABULL 348 at yahoo.com. But however, we've become a society where we want instant gratification. And yeah, I'm as guilty with, Amazon, for example. Hey, isn't that great? Pop in there, I got the account, boom, 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 it's my doorstep 2 days later. Well, I looked into Amazon, and, I thought I'd have to go down and have Brian Shue look at, the agreement. And I said, not going to happen. So, and I also realize people like the ebooks. So, in the future, we'll see what happens. And, but I chose to, my mother lives in Holmesdale, Pennsylvania, and I'm there often because of some medical issues with her, and found an independent printer that was absolutely fabulous, Spencer Printing. And they worked on the cover with me, excellent in the editing, or not providing editing, but, and they were excellent. So that's the way I chose to go, small run. There's Publish on Demand, which is, I think, also an excellent thing, so you don't have an inventory. So I have a small inventory. We'll see how it goes, and
so we're down the last 30 seconds or so. The book is Tribulation's Fate by Bob Margeson. Bob, how do they get this book?
Like I said, right now, just contact me at the email, or if you're on Facebook Messenger.
Could you repeat the email for us one more time?
It's DABULL 348 at yahoo.com. Hornell Humane Society or Cansteel Police Club has copies also.
Bob Margeson, thanks so much for coming in this morning.
My pleasure.
The Daily Beast had a headline to